ones that are not acquainted to that, it stands for Sustainable Energy, Climate and Action Plan, which is the masterpiece that cities draft in order to lay out the actions to get toward their climate and energy objectives. So in order to make their community more sustainable and adaptive. And what we wanted to do with this series is we have been producing some knowledge about funding, financing in the past as a covenant, also with other projects. Now we want to bundle everything in one series to make it easier for people to understand, to the stream of thought, to kind of learn and to deepen some of the topics. So this is the first webinar. More will come, but I will share about that more information afterwards. So let's go to the agenda of today. This is with starts with the welcome and a few more information for you from my side will come soon before handing over to Naomi Odigbo, a urban finance climate expert at ICLE Europe, that will take us through public-private partnership, what they are, why cities could think about that and how this looks like, so some example. And then we hand over to Mr. Rui Pimenta, who is Executive Director at EDI Porto, the Porto Energy Agency in Portugal, to tell us about the journey from the planning to action, thanks also with the participation of the private sector, not only, but really how to make the SECAP reality. Just a few words about the three initiatives that are behind this very webinar. Covenant of Mayor for Climate and Energy, the European City Facility and Smart City Marketplace, as mentioned. All of them are European initiatives. All of them target cities and towns all across EU 27. Looking at different moments of the climate journey, let's say. The Covenant is really stand at the commitment part, signing the will for the city to take actions, the planning, and then monitoring the progress of the action that have been put in the plan. The Covenant works on mitigation, adaptation, and energy poverty. Then we have the European City Facility that supports in developing investment concept for energy efficiency. And then we have a Smart City Marketplace that looks into smart city actions and brings them close to the financing stage. So really at the last point, connecting those with investors. The order is not casual to some extent, so you can see this as a connected in terms of steps. This is just one of the many different constellations that you could put together different European projects. So it's not needed, but we as a Covenant together with the colleagues are trying to make this potential transition very smooth and easy for the cities. Regarding the topic of today, here on the screen you see some of the available funding opportunities. Europeans are laid out because those are common for everyone. Then the national ones, of course, depends from your own country. But what is important about this is those are not the focus of this today webinar. I let Naomi telling what finance is and how we can think about it. But I just want to make clear that funding is perfectly fine, is absolutely the resources that most cities are using, and for good reasons. It doesn't mean that everything is clear, doesn't mean that those are easy to use, but still we feel that this is something that European cities are more acquainted to. This is also confirmed from research done by the Prospect Plus project that conducted a survey regarding the attitudes of cities to using innovative financing instruments. And we see that below the 30% of European cities are using innovative financing instruments, and most of the ones that are not using them are worried about the complexity, the perceived risk, the difficulties of transitioning from the day-to-day work with funding to financing. Regulatory challenges are also there, and the need for having expertise in-house to understand this better. So this is why we are now having this series, and hopefully with this very first webinar that looks into the basic, we are laying the ground for then bringing this bit of knowledge to cities. I stop there, and I'm very happy to give now the floor to Naomi Odigbo, who is a urban climate finance expert at ICLE Europe. Just to mention, before Naomi takes the floor, that of course I'm here also together with my colleague Esben Peistrup from the Smart City Marketplace that will help managing the webinar. So Naomi, over to you, and let me know when I have to change slides.
Thank you, Sylvia, for this introduction. We can go to the next slide and get straight into it. So at a basic level, what is finance? It is the management and creation of money. It's a combination of statistics, maths, and economics. And it involves things that you have heard of, such as credit, debt, securities, investments. And these are all instruments, and they will be discussed in the next slide very briefly. But we have to understand the three main categories of finance, which are public finance, corporate finance, and personal finance. And as cities, we're mostly interested in public finance. But also we are a little bit interested in corporate finance when we're talking about utilities, and also when we're talking about startups that offers innovative solutions. Next slide. And so what are financial instruments? Very briefly, an instrument is a legal agreement on a monetary value, and it is an asset that can be traded. For example, a loan to a company for example, a loan to a company can be a bond, and this bond can be bought and sold through a broker. A green bond is especially for a green project, and a social impact bond is especially for a project with a social outcome. Another example of an instrument is a stock or equity. And this is a portion of ownership in a corporation, and this can be bought and sold in the stock exchange, such as the London Stock Exchange or Euronext, which is the Pan-European Stock Exchange. An example of a utility, a very good example of utility with privately traded stocks or publicly traded stocks is the German energy provider E.ON, and it is entirely owned by investors. It's the world's largest investor-owned energy provider, actually, and only 42% of its stock is owned by German investors, meaning the majority of the shareholders and its stock is held by investors outside of Germany. And there's many different types of instruments, as you can see in the graph below, and they can further be classified by class. So, for example, a bond is a debt instrument in the securities asset class, whereas a loan is a debt instrument in the cash asset class. The main difference between a security and a cash instrument is that a security is publicly traded, whereas a cash instrument is not. You can go to the next slide. So the monetary policy tools and fiscal policy tools are mechanisms that are used by the central banks or by central governments. Fiscal policy tools are the base of public finance, and they're mechanisms by central governments. And common tools that are used by local governments and central governments are, as I mentioned before, the government tax systems and government debt management. And for the municipal level in particular, the most common tools are government transfers and grants, instruments such as bonds, and other tools such as taxes, charges, and licenses. But some there are so many other ways to raise finance for municipalities. Very common ways are land value capture. That's when a government charges developers and property owners for land development based off of the increasing value of the area subsequent to the development and or as a result of the development. And also another very emerging alternative is pooled financing, where the municipalities combine their cash and wealth in order to borrow or to issue a bond. Um, but another very common alternative is PPPs. Um, a PPP is a long-term contract between a government entity and a private entity at a fundamental level. And we'll go into that in the next slide. And so in the PPP, the contract is for the private actor to provide a public asset or service, and the private party bears most of the risk and management responsibility, and they get paid based off of the performance the of the assets, such as the train line, such as the energy service. And so the private partner is paid for service delivery, and the profits objectives of the private company has to be aligned with the service delivery goals of the government, contracting government party. So the private partner actually is going to raise money to design and construct this this project. And this money comes from equity and debt that is raised through a special purpose vehicle. And the private partner is raising this money instead of the government having to allocate a part of its budget for this. So if the government does not allow further debt, this is a common solution. It's very uh, not to say convenient, but as I said, a very common solution for governments that have strict debt limits. And the private partner is compensated for this investment through only during the operational period through user charges, such as metro tickets, or through government payments. If there's poor quality of service, their payments are reduced. The private partner has to meet quality and performance standards and so has to assume maintenance risks. The private sector is considered better at managing these risks than the public sector, and so will need to have a lower risk price than the government. If something goes wrong, both the private partner and the government have to have invested money and their capital at risk. Otherwise, the private partner can quit the project without losing anything. So both parties have to have skin in the game, especially the private actor. The private actor will usually be a special purpose vehicle that is created especially for the project to develop and manage the project. And the special purpose vehicle will hire companies for operation and maintenance, for engineering, procurement, and construction. And it will also find investors as shareholders, take out a loan, and take out insurance contracts. We can go to the next slide for an example of a PPP. An energy service company is a big example of a PPP. It is like an SPV. It subcontracts to develop, design, and arrange financing for an energy project. And the types of energy projects that it conducts is for energy conservation measures specifically. It is for projects that save energy, reduce energy costs, and decrease operations and maintenance costs. And here, the company is remunerated for the cost savings according to an energy performance contract. So, in a classic case of a classic ESCO, will pay for procurement, installation, and ongoing maintenance of lighting infrastructure in exchange for monthly savings obtained from this project. You also have a guaranteed savings model that is very common in Europe, where the company guarantees certain savings on the energy bill, and the company also takes on risks, but then the client obtains a loan or uses their own equity to pay determined fees to the SEO, and they keep the difference. So the second example is a concession. And a concession is where a land is granted in exchange for a right to profit by a specific activity. So it allows governments to develop a project and gain a portion of its revenues, while the private company raises the capital, builds a project, and collects most of the operating revenue. This is a very good solution for governments who do not want to take on technical risk as well, and who are and who would need support in raising capital for a project. Common example of public concessions are in the water sector and also in the road motorway sector. So in the water sector, it would be the right to develop and maintain water services and to be remunerated through water charges. And in the road infrastructure sector, this would be the right to build and manage a motorway and be remunerated through tolls. In a concession, a company is mostly remunerated by being permitted to work or run a service, and it is exposed to potential loss on its investment, and it also exposed to the risk that the revenue will not cover its investment. So there's this demand aspect of risk where you need to make sure that there's enough people who are paying for the water or paying for the tolls to ensure that the company is remunerated adequately. And these are common examples of concessions that we are going to go into later in the series. Yes, if you have any more questions about the risk or anything else about this presentation, this part of the presentation, we can discuss this at the end of this presentation. That's all from me, Sylvia.
Thank you very much, Naomi, for these inspiring kind of high-level, forward-looking examples of like the kind of terms, names for people to keep in their mind when they start thinking about working with the private sector. As this being the first webinar in the series, we didn't only want to discuss specific financial models, we did also want to go into what do you do when you have an ambition. So you have, like where do you want to go, but how do you start acting on these specific actions and like kind of point out what to do with what, when to look for private, when to work with other models. And to discuss that, we're very, very pleased to welcome Rui Pimenta, Executive Director at Porto. Porto, it's the Porto's energy agency, who has the double pleasure of having earlier been a beneficiary of the EUCF and now being a so-called national hub in Portugal. Rui?
Thank you very much. Good morning to all, and thanks for the opportunity. I will share my screen. Please just confirm it's okay. Yes, good.
It's perfect.
So thanks again for the opportunity. So I will not take so much time and leave some more opportunities for the questions. Basically, what we did in Porto with the EUCF, we identified this opportunity to look forward into the municipal activity and try to define a way how can we be more efficiency, how can we find the financing to implement the necessary measures in terms of energy efficiency or renewable, in terms of decarbonization of our own activity as a city. So basically, just some context. So Porto municipality, it's a very dense territory, and our main emissions come from buildings. 50% of our emission comes from that, and the remaining, let's say, most of all comes from the transport sector. So this is very well identified in our city. So we don't have industry, or at least large industry. We don't have agriculture. So it should be more easy in terms of planning and defining the measures to prioritize our impact. So this way started with the recent SECAP that was presented and approved in 2020. where we defined a way until 2030 in terms of emissions reduction. In 2021, we applied that one under the Smart Cities challenge, let's say, and recently we were approved. So this was very good. So what we did was to identify the way how should we accelerate the SECAP measures that were planned for 2030 and also to 2050. So we brought them together and we tried to understand exactly how should we force the implementations of the measures to be able to be neutral in 2030. In 2021, we also created a Porto Climate Pact that it's basically a pact where we want to involve everybody, every stakeholder of the city in this goal of the decarbonization. And the year after, 2022, we started with this EUCF application and also the EUCF concept, where we identified an investment plan for the municipality activities in terms of investment in energy efficiency, renewable energy, and decarbonization. So this was for us a very structured path that allow us to reach this, let's say, budget or goal in terms of investment for the municipal side. So we identified, and this is for sure similar to other territories, where should we invest, and a complete set of projects where we prioritize an investment in terms of building renovation for the buildings in terms of social housing, but also service buildings. Just to give an idea, for Porto Municipality, 13% of the population lives in social housing buildings, so it's a large percentage. So there is a lot of buildings, public buildings in our city. Also, street lighting, completely change of all the public lighting for LED. To start promoting the renewable energy productions for the municipal installations, but also working with energy communities that meanwhile was approved with the concept in Portugal. It was concluded the law for allowing these projects. The mobility to become 100% electrical fleet for the municipal fleet, and also some other investments in EV charging and cyclable lanes. And then also a major investment that was identified for the sustainable water management to create the production of biogas in water treatment facilities. So this was the main projects that we identified in the main activities that we identified when we applied for the UCF and for this concept plan. So in terms of the expected impacts, so just a few numbers. So we were expecting a huge production in terms of renewable energy production, and also large energy savings per year in terms of electricity and other energy vectors. So 250 million euros, more or less, was and is our investment plan for Porto Municipality. From these measures, the investment is going for buildings. Then for sustainable water management, 62 million euros. The renewable energy production, mobility, and street lighting with the smaller values. But so what we see here is a large amount of investment that is planned to be implemented in public buildings. And where do we expect it to find this money to implement these measures? Of course, that the large quantity we are speaking about funding and the national funding and European funding for this. Some private, some capital that is coming from the municipality, and then some percentage that we are working for this innovative financing instruments that could bring some private capital for these implementations. Of course, that when we are speaking about this requested funding and these 150 millions, this is already ongoing. Some of this amount. So we have already an approval for a large amount from national funds. And Porto is also signing a contract with the EIB for the European Investment Bank for supporting a lot of other projects, but also some projects regarding energy efficiency. So some of this amount it's also coming from the EIB. The other amount that it's capital, municipal capital, it's already approved. So the investment plan from the municipality, it's already approved. So there is already an ongoing annual investment that it's going to be done and it's approved. And the other sources, it's more difficult for us to work. So what we are doing, and right now, we are analyzing some opportunities in terms of private investment. There are some EXCO companies, or let's say there are some projects that we are identifying to be launched for testing with EXCO companies in terms of buildings renovation. So this is one of the models that right now we are working. And then the other model that we are planning to launch a tender this year, it's regarding an operational leasing that it's for promoting renewable energy production in a large scale buildings, service buildings, not only for Porto, but for Porto metropolitan area. So what we are doing, it's a large tender covering 10 municipalities. Of course, Porto, it's part of it. Porto municipality, it's part of it. And this large tender, it's going to bring private capital for the investment on this renewable energy production. So there is not so many projects that are being developed regarding private capital. So just to share some things that already have been done. So Porto right now already changed completely the public lighting, and it's 100% LED. It was all municipal funding, and right now what it's developing, it's another system for managing this public lighting that will be, of course, will bring also some reductions in terms of consumption, but it's also going to be a municipal investment. In terms of service buildings production, there are a lot of buildings that already have photovoltaic installed. And for this, like I was saying, we have own funding, so municipal funding, and the remaining will come from this tender of operational leasing that it's going to be launched until the end of the year. We are also developing the energy communities. Sorry about that line there. So the Porto municipality already approved 6 megawatts, or let's say 6 million euros for the production in all the social housing buildings of the city. So the first one, it's this image, it's already in operation, and the tender for 1.5 million euros, it's going to be launched also this year. And this funding, it's coming from the municipal funding also, and part of it for the future projects, will come from this EIB contract that it's being signed now. The fleet, it's not fully 100%, it's 75 right now, because there is some, let's say, major vehicles that are not yet capable of being fully electrical, but all the small fleet of small vehicles are all 100% electric. And with this large scale grid for charging, there are more than 300 EV chargers owned by the municipality. And for this, we also have two financing models. So we have operational leasing contract that it's ongoing, and also some capital that it's presented from the municipality. And of course, some of the projects, then just to promote some of the projects that are being launched with these investments being done by the municipality and other sources. So basically, in the end, what we have right now, and the report that was presented to the UCF, we have around 40% of the investment, it's already done. But some of the capital that it's necessary for this large investment plan, it's already approved by the municipality. We are working with the other schemes coming from the IB and national funding, and working in the small scale projects. Unfortunately, for now, it's like that. Small scale projects where we are testing these innovative financing models. Just to conclude, so one of the ways that we thought that could bring us a potential in terms of also working different funding models is to bring everybody to this goal of reaching the neutrality by 2030. This is creating a movement, let's say, where every entity and banks, funds, let's say all kinds of services and entities, stakeholders of the city, they are already committed with this goal, and they are sharing their experiences. They are sharing also the opportunities where they want and are able to financing. And with all this knowledge and with all this conversations, let's say, we are trying to accelerate this goal, and of course creating these new opportunities, mainly also bringing the private capital for this. And just to conclude, just to share that Porto right now also have the label of 100 city missions. So we have the goal to reach the neutrality by 2030. Of course, this is for the whole territory. This is for the city as a whole. In terms of the municipal investment and this 20 and 250 million euros, like I was saying, most of it's already approved from national and public fundings, but we are open to test and to implement other schemes. Just to conclude, so Portuguese law, it's not easy. I think that there are, of course, some problems or some difficulties in other countries, but for us, it's not very easy for let's say, we cannot work with green bonds, so that is something that it's not right now defined in Portugal. There is some problems also with sharing personal and corporate finance with the private finance. So there is a lot of difficulties created by the Portuguese law and the Portuguese contracting procedures that doesn't allow so easily to the private participation. So there is a way, there is a path that we already identified, but there are many things that need to be changed for it. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you very much, Rui. And by no chance we ask you to come as an inspirational example. It's very nice to see how really starting from the planning and then one step after the other, you managed to reach this level of ambition and these results. So congratulations to you. Now it's really the moment for anyone in the room to ask questions and address any doubts that might have or clarifications, both to the case of Porto and or the presentation by Naomi. So please feel free to either raise your hand and speak up or to put your question in the chat. While people get on their keyboards or they find their raising hand button, I would have a question for Rui, which is which is related to the budget that you showed. I see that nowadays the city of Porto is counting on a set of is diversifying, of course. Part is national, as you said, part is municipal owned, and part is this other. And you mentioned also that you are testing out the different models. And my question to you would be, how was this, if you know, I don't know, of course, since how long you've been working in the municipality, but maybe you can get a sense of how it looked like in the past, and meaning, was it a big change, a big shift in the mindset on conceptualizing the budget that kind of brought you to include private, or was it always kind of in the Porto DNA?
So there was a huge evolution that first of all was to create and to approve an investment plan like this in terms of these goals, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of renewable energy. So this was something that was not identified, and both the OCF and also recently these missions, what was allowed us was to identify concrete plans, concrete measures, and also to associate with these measures the necessary investment for them. not only conceptual. So we need to do these kind of measures. We need to produce renewable energy. We need to do something else. But okay, but how much does it cost? And where should we bring this money? How can we find this money? So there is some opportunity in terms of municipal funding. Can we approve it? So there is also a political goal in terms of passing this image that we are also creating more efficiency, more decarbonization for the territory, that we are leading by the example. So this was a way that was necessary to present, to convince the politicians, let's say. But right now, this is very present on the executive right now, and for sure it will maintain, hopefully for the future, because we're really focusing as one of the main goals as the decarbonization of the territory. And Porto Municipality right now, in all every year when they develop the investment for the next year and for the other years, they are always considering everything, or at least a huge part of the investment is coming from these teams. Of course, that we have limited funding, so we are putting some efforts in terms of public funding. We are very dependent of national funding and European funding, like all of us for sure. The private funding as itself, like I was saying, we are open for it. We are trying to promote the participation of private entities to developing some of these projects. Right now, what it's more easy for us is it's in terms of the EPC, is that there is already a regulation, a national regulation, where we can bring the ExCo companies to make the investments and sharing the savings. But all the other schemes, it's still really concepts as innovative and also pilots that we need to test and to approve. So they are sensibilized for it, but we need to test it, and we need to see that every procedure, every entity that it's involved, not only the municipal, but also the government, all the legislator as a whole, can approve or will approve these new concepts that right now they are not present in our law.
Thank you very much. So a big change happened, and it seems that still this has been kind of bought in and now is endorsed, let's say.
Yeah.
I see that there is a question in the chat, which is to Rui again, if it's possible to share a bit more about the European Investment Bank agreement. Was it correctly understood it's supporting social housing? So, and if so, how does it work? Between brackets, while AIB is public, it is financing, meaning smaller upfront costs when taking action. So it would be interesting to understand how this works.
Okay, so I will not enter in a huge detail because this is still an ongoing contract that it's not yet closed. But what we have right now on negotiation with the EIB, it's 400 million euros investment plan with a lot of projects on it. Some of them are regarding energy efficiency in terms of transports, in terms of housing renovation. Also water treatment facilities. So it's a huge pipeline of projects, a huge pipeline of financing that we are negotiating with them. And some of these measures, they are directly impacted with what we are saying, like, for example, renewable energy production. So they will financing only 50%. This is the amount that they normally finance. So the remaining will come from the municipality or other fundings. I don't know if this was clear.
I see colleagues nodding, so yeah, thanks for that. And there is another question for Rui regarding how basically the European City Facility have been supporting you to develop this investment concept, and if this was leading a success.
Yes, for sure that the European City Facilities was a success, and it's not because we are on this panel right now. It was for for us to put numbers on the measures that we thought, or at least that we already identified. So right now, as a plan, as an investment plan, we know exactly how much money and what will be the impact of each measure. And with this relation, we can prioritize the investments and try to find the best funding sources for each. So it was very important, and it's still very important for us to develop this and to work with this investment concept that was developed with the EUCF.
It's great to hear that it really helped in this sense. And more, as I saw also another question in the chat, more about news and UCF will come at the end of this session as part of the closing and updates. Maybe one question to Naomi regarding the example that you shared, which of course are a sneak preview, let's say, of what could be intended as a public-private partnership and financing in general. And we heard of experimentation ongoing from the city of Porto. Maybe what could you be suggesting to cities to kind of be at the lookout in sense of what they should be mindful of when thinking about financing? What would be your advice? I would imagine that there are also some risks that come with it. So what would you be suggesting them to be mindful of?
Thank you for your question. So there's many different kinds of risks that can come about from PPPs. There's the risk of technical failure that has to be taken on. There's the risk of there's also benefits such as the local market and infrastructure base becoming more competitive. Different kinds of risk also depend on the types of incentives that you want to give to your local enterprises and the types of the shareholder ownership you want to have in your local utilities. Something that is a big common consideration for local utilities is the share of ownership of the public sector versus the private sector. How much ownership can the local government retain over utility when they have decided to put stocks or shares on the market? It's important for the local government to consider how much ownership how much stake they want to retain in the government so that they can make sure that this public service orientation is maintained, that the prioritization of the service and the availability and the access to the service is maintained. So I would say that ownership structures are a very important thing to consider.
Thank you so much. And whoever is in the room and might have experience of those or doubts about it, please feel free to share it. Not only question, but also experience in the chat. Those are much welcome. And building on what Naomi just shared, and also on this, on the fact that Rui, you mentioned this is kind of a new territory for you as well, for the city as well. You are testing out. The law is not making it necessarily easy. I was wondering, how are you dealing internally with capacity building or getting the right knowledge in order to bring this forward? We heard from municipality often the difficulty is really to have someone in-house or some support that can really help in making the way through these new concepts.
Okay, so what, like for us, for Porto Municipality, so they have the Porto Energy Agency, and we are supporting them on this theme. So it should be easier for them to work these new concepts without having structure, own structure in terms of people working with the municipality for this. So we are supporting them, and from our side, so we are learning every day, and what it's bring us the opportunity to test the new models. We are right now involved in a lot of projects, European projects, Life and Horizon projects. Most of them we are focusing on these innovative financing models, and this is creating the opportunity to test, to implement some pilots, of course, to learn from the experience of the other partners of the other European projects and partners on each project. So this is it's being very helpful for us because in the end we are putting in place and trying to implement in our country, or at least in our region, some of the concepts that are being already implemented in other places, and we are doing it in a very small scale to try to see how they might work in the future. So basically in Porto, it's how they are. So Porto Energy Agency and other municipal companies that are focusing on these issues, we are working together to giving this support.
It's good to stress the importance of the energy agency in providing this support, and definitely this is a key element. But it's also interesting to hear how you are making use of funds through project to then gain knowledge that can be used for this other piece of work. Question is whether Porto ever consider an ESCO like concept for the lighting update. You mentioned that it's 100% LED.
Yeah. Yes. So this idea started a few years ago, and the first thought was exactly to do it with an EXCO company. So we developed the model, we develop all the studies with the EXCO company. But then, like I was saying, so Porto municipality and the politicians, we as the Porto city, we identified that these issues should be worked with more focus and with more enthusiasm. So we analyzed the scenario of doing our own investment, and of course the impact in terms of financing it's much higher. And Porto was able to create in meanwhile a municipal company only for utilities. So we have right now a municipal company as an utility for water and energy management. So Porto did the investment, and all the management of the grid now it's being also done by the municipal company. So instead of having the ESCO company doing the investment, doing the maintenance, doing all the managing of the project, Porto developed a concept to do it by their own. Of course, in terms of financing, the numbers are better. That's of course, but Porto was also able to have a good bank account that in the end could make this investment, and so this is the decision that was taken. And from my point of view, it was very positive. But I can share that many other municipalities and even municipalities from the Energy Agency, we are supporting them with the projects of EXCO, and they are working very well.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. This it's especially lighting and changing the bulbs to LED is the typical example of ESCO model. So I had actually a bit the same question on what was different for you. This is, I see, I'm mindful about time. We are reaching the end of this 1 hour session. So any question that you might have still, please feel free to share. Maybe one last one from my side to both of you. Naomi, if you also would like to give it a thought, is more like looking at the future. How do you see considering your own work, Rui, in Porto, the next step, and what do you see? It's going to be a little bit challenging. You mentioned about the law not being easy. Is it the key, let's say, difficulty, or is it also, I'm thinking, for example, building a partnership or bringing all stakeholders on the table could be also quite difficult. So what, looking at the future, you see as a next step a bit of a challenging one, and how do you think could be fixed? And then maybe, Naomi, if you also could think about city and finance, what do you see in the future it's going to be the challenge for most of European cities in this field? Maybe we'll start with Rui.
Okay, from my point of view, of course, there is a lot of changes that have to be done in terms of at least Portuguese law to allow and to make it easier for have this combination of public and private investment, mainly for energy projects, energy efficiency, renewable energy production, and other projects that in the end will help this the carbonization of the territory. So there are still a lot of work that have to be done. But honestly, I think that the way that we are doing it is using this investment plan from the OCF and also the investment plan from the 100 city missions is us to allowing to identify the best measures that should be where we should focus our efforts and try to implement, even if it's in a small scale, these new innovative financing models. And if we do this and we are able to have success with this, like all the other measures that I presented before, there will be a huge impact because the municipality with this main, or at least with the act that could implement the projects and lead by the example, will be the main message to escalate all these new concepts. So there is a way, but I think that okay, we should and we have to find the procedures to make it faster. But the concepts and the small projects they are starting to appear. So I believe that in a very near future there we will have easier process to bring this private financing to our measures.
Well, thanks for this positive message indeed, and I like also to think a bit broader that if any success you might have, it's going to kind of be helpful for any other city that is willing to kind of follow the same path. And then to Naomi, if you have any thoughts about financing, innovative financing, the future that European city will have to look after.
Pooled financing is something that I think cities should take a look at. It's a mechanism for smaller municipalities to gather their resources to be able to take out debt. So municipalities that would maybe not have enough of a budget or additional assets to be able to have collateral for a debt, for a bond, or for a loan, sorry, then they now have this option through pooled finance. Another issue that I think cities should be aware of is that governments do place a lot of restrictions on taking out on borrowing, on the municipality's ability to borrow, because there are a lot of governments are suffering from high debt levels. And so looking at off-balance sheet solutions such as PPPs are something that are PPPs are a very attractive solution for municipalities to keep an eye out for.
Thank you for these pointers. We might keep them in mind in moving forward in our series. And with that, I'd like to close the discussion. I see that has been also shared in the chat a link to the to the resources that the Smart City Marketplace have been producing regarding LED and ESCO models. So inviting everyone to check out that, but also the website of the three initiatives. And before saying goodbye, just a few announcements regarding interesting opportunities that you might take note of. So as said, regarding this webinar series, which is the first one the Covenants is launching in this format, we met today with this kind of general introduction and inspiration from Porto. The next one is going to be specifically on energy performance contracting. So you heard about ESCO quite a lot today. If you are interested in these 2 hours, we are going just to discuss that and provide concrete examples. Then we will be early next year meet on public purchase agreement, and then finally we will discuss also about insurance to make sure that the adaptation side is also covered. I hear someone unmuted, so if you could also keep it, that would be great. Thank you. And then just a reminder for anyone, the Covenant of Mayor launched a City Heat Detox campaign. So we are looking at decarbonizing the heating and to some extent also the cooling sector. You are very much welcome to check out resources that has been produced, but also there is a Covenant of Mayor award that is now launched. The deadline for submissions is coming up soon, but still time for you to check out and potentially candidate your city to become the next winning one for this award is connected with the City Heat Detox. And then I hand over to Esben for the next.
Yes, just very, very briefly. Yeah. Sorry, very briefly, I'm just going to quickly tell you about the EUCF's open call and then the Smart Cities Marketplace running call, both offering support of varying specifics. I mean, the EUCF, it has a call open for grants on 60,000 euros to kind of plan out your energy actions. It needs to be specific things from the SECAP, and you can apply until 18th December. Now, that's somewhat soon, but in general, if you have a SECAP, if you have actions, it's totally possible to do in a month. I want to flag that the success rate's normally between 25 and 50%. So while it's more than Horizon, as we spoke about earlier, it's not guaranteed that you will get the money, and you can learn more about it on the EUCF. You do need to be an EU, Ukrainian, or Icelandic city, or a grouping or aggregation of cities. Next slide, please. And then we also have the Smart Cities Marketplace. Unlike the UCF, it's not giving out money, but it's giving out high-level expertise for free. It basically provides input on, practically speaking, all of your specific actions that you want to take and how you can help connect them with finance. It goes both in terms of matchmaking with actual investors, but also in terms of the technical specifics. So whether you should go with that kind of LED or this kind of LED, or how others have approached setting up, for example, an ESCO. The application is essentially just letting us know that you're interested by sending an email. It's there. You can also find it through the link I just shared in the chat. And it's open to everyone. And here the success rate is significantly higher than in the EUCF. And then just to say, it's for all EU member states or Horizon eligible countries, so that's a bit wider. And companies can also apply here, but they need to be working specifically with a city on a specific city project or city implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Esben. Great news ahead of us. Just before closing, we would like also to ask any of you to give us a little bit of a feedback. We want to make this series useful, so please feel free to get to this link. As soon as I'm able, I will stop sharing. Voila. Just to let us know if it was useful for you and which other topics you would like to focus on. And with that, I'd like to close the session and thank very much Rui from the Porto Energy Agency and Naomi for sharing your expertise and staying with us for this hour, and wish you a great continuation of the day. Thanks.